Captain Sarah Mitchell gripped the cyclic control as her AH-64 Apache helicopter cut through the morning air above the Afghan mountains. The radio crackled with intelligence updates that made her stomach tighten. Enemy forces had been moving weapons through this valley for weeks, and today's mission was supposed to end that. Reaper 6, this is Overlord. We have confirmed movement in Grid Sector 74 Alpha. Multiple vehicles, possible anti-aircraft weapons, came the voice through her headset. Sarah glanced at her co-pilot and weapons officer, Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez, sitting in front of her in the gunner's seat. Jake, you seeing this on thermal? Roger that. 3 vehicles, looks like technical trucks with mounted weapons. Wait. Jake paused, studying his targeting display more carefully. Sarah, something's not right here. These vehicles are positioned too perfectly, like they want us to see them. Sarah had been flying combat missions for 8 years. She learned to trust that feeling when something seemed off. The enemy convoy was positioned in an open area of the valley, completely exposed. No experienced fighter would leave themselves that vulnerable unless they had a reason. Overlord, Reaper 6. Request additional intel on surrounding areas. These targets seem deliberately exposed, Sarah transmitted. Reaper 6, negative. Mission parameters are clear. Eliminate the convoy and return to base. Time is critical. Sarah frowned. Command was pushing for a quick strike, but her instincts screamed danger. She'd seen too many ambushes in these mountains to ignore the warning signs. The Taliban and other militant groups had become experts at setting traps for coalition aircraft. Jake, run a full sweep with the longbow radar. I want to know what's hiding in those ridgelines. Already on it, Jake replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. The Apache's sophisticated radar system began painting a detailed picture of the surrounding terrain. Within seconds, Jake's voice turned grim. Sarah, we've got company. Multiple heat signatures concealed in the rocks. Looks like shoulder-fired missile systems. How many? At least 6 positions, maybe more. They've got us in a kill box. Sarah's mind raced through the tactical situation. The convoy in the valley was bait, designed to draw aircraft into range of hidden surface-to-air missiles. It was a classic trap, and Command was ordering her to fly straight into it. Overlord, Reaper 6. We have multiple SAM threats in the area. Recommend abort and reassess. Negative, Reaper 6. Intelligence indicates minimal threat. Proceed with mission. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. Someone in the intelligence chain had either missed the threats or was deliberately ignoring them. Either way, they were asking her to sacrifice her aircraft and crew for a handful of trucks that might not even contain real weapons. Jake, what's your read on those vehicles? Are we looking at actual targets or decoys? Jake adjusted his thermal imaging and zoomed in on the convoy. After a long moment, he shook his head. Heat signatures are wrong. Those trucks aren't running hot engines. They've been sitting there for hours, maybe longer. And I'm not seeing the kind of movement you'd expect from an active weapons convoy. So we're looking at bait trucks and real missiles, Sarah concluded. Perfect. The radio crackled again. Reaper 6, you're ordered to engage targets immediately. Command is tracking your position. Sarah knew that tone. Some colonel back at headquarters was watching their mission through satellite feeds and drone cameras, probably with a room full of analysts telling him the Apache crew was being overly cautious. They couldn't see the heat signatures Jake was tracking, couldn't feel the wrongness of the tactical situation. Jake, I need options. Can we engage the SAM sites first? Negative. They're positioned in caves and rock overhangs. Hellfire missiles won't be effective against those positions. And the moment we fire, every militant in this valley is going to light us up. Sarah looked at her fuel gauge. They had maybe 20 minutes of combat time before needing to return to base. 20 minutes to either complete an impossible mission or find a way out of this trap without getting herself and Jake killed. Overlord, Reaper 6. Request immediate close air support. We have multiple threats that need to be neutralized before we can engage primary targets. Reaper 6, no additional assets are available. You have your orders. Sarah felt the familiar surge of frustration that every combat pilot knew. The people giving orders were sitting in air-conditioned rooms, looking at computer screens, making decisions about life and death without understanding the reality on the ground. Or in this case, in the air above a valley full of people trying to kill her. Jake, how good are our chances if we go in fast and low? Honestly, maybe 30%. These aren't farm boys with old rifles. Whoever set this up knows our capabilities and our limitations. Sarah stared down at the valley below. The convoy sat motionless in the open ground, waiting. The hidden missile teams would be watching her Apache through their targeting systems, fingers on triggers, waiting for her to come into range. She'd faced impossible odds before. 2 years ago, she'd been shot down in Iraq and spent 3 days evading capture before rescue arrived. Last year, she'd flown through a sandstorm to extract wounded soldiers from a surrounded outpost. But this felt different. This felt like someone was deliberately sending her into a trap. Overlord, Reaper 6. I need clarification on mission priority. Are we after the convoy specifically, or are we trying to disrupt enemy operations in this sector? Reaper 6, your target is the convoy. All other considerations are secondary. Sarah made her decision. She was going to complete the mission, but not the way Command expected. Instead of flying into the kill zone like a good soldier, she was going to use her 8 years of combat experience to turn the trap against the people who'd set it. Jake, I need you to lock onto one of those SAM positions. The one with the clearest shot at the valley floor. Sarah, what are you thinking? I'm thinking someone wants us to die today. And I'm thinking they picked the wrong pilot. She pushed the Apache into a dive, heading not toward the convoy, but toward the ridgeline where the missiles waited. Time to spring their trap the hard way. The radio erupted with angry voices from command, ordering her to return to mission parameters. Sarah reached over and turned down the volume. She had work to do. Sarah pulled the Apache into a steep climbing turn, using the mountain terrain to mask her approach from the hidden missile teams. Jake worked frantically at his controls, trying to maintain target locks on the concealed positions while the helicopter maneuvered aggressively through the thin mountain air. I've got tone on the primary SAM site, Jake called out. But, Sarah, if we engage, every other position is going to open fire. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Sometimes you have to make them show their hand. She brought the Apache around a rocky outcropping, putting herself in direct line of sight with the hidden missile team. For a split second, both sides could see each other clearly. Sarah saw the flash of sunlight on metal as the enemy fighters adjusted their aim. Jake, fire! The Hellfire missile streaked away from the Apache just as Sarah threw the helicopter into a violent, evasive maneuver. The enemy missile team fired at the same instant, their surface-to-air missile leaving a white contrail as it climbed toward them. Missile inbound, Jake shouted, but Sarah was already moving. She pulled the Apache behind a rocky ridge just as the enemy missile screamed past their previous position. The explosion of Jake's Hellfire lit up the mountainside where the SAM team had been hiding. Splash 1, Jake confirmed. But we've got multiple launches. They're all firing now. The sky around them filled with smoke trails as every hidden missile team revealed their positions. Sarah counted at least 8 missiles climbing toward them from different directions. It was exactly what she'd hoped for, and exactly what might get them killed. Overlord, Reaper 6. We're taking heavy fire from multiple concealed positions. Marking targets for follow-up strikes, Sarah transmitted while diving the Apache toward the valley floor. Reaper 6, you are ordered to engage the convoy. Explain your actions. Sarah almost laughed. Even with missiles flying around them, Command was more concerned about following orders than tactical reality. Overlord, we're marking the actual threats. The convoy was bait. She pulled up hard, using the Apache's maneuverability to stay ahead of the incoming missiles. 2 exploded against the mountainside where they'd been seconds before. A third missed and streaked off into the distance. But 5 more were still tracking them, and the Apache's defensive systems were reaching their limits. Jake, I need chaff and flares, everything we've got. Dispensing now. The Apache's countermeasures filled the air around them with metallic chaff and bright flares designed to confuse incoming missiles. 3 of the remaining missiles took the bait, exploding harmlessly in the cloud of decoys. But 2 kept coming, their guidance systems locked onto the Apache's heat signature. Sarah dove toward the valley floor, pulling the helicopter through a narrow canyon between 2 ridges. The missile teams couldn't target them here, but the 2 missiles still tracking them followed relentlessly. The canyon walls flashed past on either side, close enough that Sarah could see individual rocks and crevices. "Sarah, we've got maybe 10 seconds before those missiles reach us," Jake warned, his voice tight with concentration. "I know. Hold on." At the last possible moment, Sarah pulled the Apache up and over a rocky outcropping. The 2 missiles, unable to maneuver as quickly as the helicopter, slammed into the rocks below them. The explosions sent debris flying past their aircraft, but they were clear. "Holy shit," Jake breathed. "How did you know that would work?" "I didn't," Sarah admitted. But sitting still definitely wouldn't have worked. The radio crackled with a new voice. "Reaper 6, this is Thunder 2-1. We have your position and are inbound with close air support." Sarah felt relief wash over her. Thunder 2-1 was an F-16 call sign. Someone at command had finally realized the Apache was facing more than just a simple convoy and sent real help. "Thunder 2-1, Reaper 6. We have multiple SAM sites marked and neutralized 1 enemy position. Sending coordinates now." "Copy that, Reaper 6. We see your smoke. Rolling in hot." Sarah climbed back to a safe altitude and watched as 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons swept into the valley. Their bombs fell with precision onto the revealed missile positions, sending up columns of smoke and debris. Within minutes, the hidden threat network that had taken weeks to position was completely destroyed. "Reaper 6, Thunder 2-1. Valley is clear. Your convoy targets are still in the open if you want them." Sarah looked down at the 3 trucks sitting motionless in the valley floor. After everything they'd just been through, the original targets seemed almost anticlimactic. But orders were orders. "Jake, let's finish this." The Hellfire missiles made quick work of the abandoned vehicles. As Sarah suspected, they were empty decoys filled with scrap metal to create the right heat signatures. The real weapons convoy had probably passed through days ago. "Overlord, Reaper 6. Primary targets destroyed. Valley secured. Returning to base." "Reaper 6, Overlord. You deviated from mission parameters. Prepare for debrief upon return." Sarah shook her head. Even after proving the mission was a trap, Command was more concerned about her breaking protocol than the fact that she'd identified and eliminated a significant threat to Coalition aircraft. "Jake, you ever wonder why we do this job?" "Because we're good at it," Jake replied, "and because someone has to." As they flew back toward base, Sarah thought about the trap that had been set for them. Someone in the enemy command structure understood Coalition tactics well enough to position fake targets and real threats in exactly the right configuration to destroy an Apache helicopter. That level of sophisticated planning suggested they were dealing with experienced military minds, not just local fighters. "Jake, make sure your mission recordings are backed up. Someone's going to want to analyze how they set that trap." "Already done. But, Sarah, what if Command doesn't believe our assessment? Then the next Apache crew that flies into one of these valleys might not be as lucky as we were." The mountains passed beneath them, beautiful and deadly in the morning sunlight. Sarah knew that somewhere down there, enemy fighters were already planning their next ambush, learning from today's failure to create an even more effective trap. But they'd also learned something important today. They'd learned that Captain Sarah Mitchell didn't fly blindly into kill zones, no matter who ordered her to do it. And the next time they tried to set a trap for her, she'd be ready for them. Back at Forward Operating Base Chapman, Sarah shut down the Apache's engines and sat in the cockpit for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. The rotor blades slowly stopped spinning above her head, and the familiar sounds of the base took over, generators humming, vehicles moving, soldiers going about their duties. "Hell of a mission," Jake said, climbing out of his seat. His hand was still shaking slightly from the intensity of their engagement. "Yeah," Sarah replied, but her mind was already on the debrief. She knew Colonel Harris would have questions about why she deviated from orders. What worried her more was whether anyone would listen to her assessment about the sophistication of the trap they'd encountered. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself standing at attention in the colonel's office, still wearing her flight suit and smelling of jet fuel and cordite. Colonel James Harris looked up from his computer screen with the expression of a man who'd spent too many years dealing with pilots who thought they knew better than their commanding officers. "Captain Mitchell, Lieutenant Rodriguez, sit down." His voice was clipped and professional. "I've reviewed the preliminary mission reports. You want to explain to me why you engaged targets that weren't on your target list?" Sarah had been preparing for this conversation during the entire flight back. "Sir, the primary targets were clearly bait. Intelligence missed a sophisticated ambush network that nearly cost us our aircraft and crew. Intelligence indicated minimal threat in that sector. With respect, sir, intelligence was wrong. We identified at least 8 concealed surface-to-air missile positions that were specifically positioned to create a kill zone around the convoy." Colonel Harris leaned back in his chair. "Captain, we have satellite imagery of that valley. Our analysts saw no signs of SAM sites. Because they were well concealed, sir. These weren't amateur fighters with shoulder-fired missiles. This was a coordinated ambush using professional military tactics." Jake spoke up. "Sir, I have thermal imaging recordings of the entire engagement. The heat signatures clearly show the concealed positions before we engaged." The colonel's expression softened slightly. He'd been a pilot himself before taking command, and he understood the difference between aircrew paranoia and legitimate tactical assessment. "All right, walk me through exactly what happened from the moment you entered the target area." For the next hour, Sarah and Jake detailed every aspect of their mission. They showed the thermal recordings, explained their tactical decisions, and demonstrated how the enemy had positioned their forces to maximize damage to any aircraft that approached the convoy. When they finished, Colonel Harris was quiet for several minutes, studying the mission data on his computer screen. "Captain, your actions saved your aircraft and crew, but you also compromised a larger intelligence operation that's been weeks in development." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Sir, the convoy was part of a tracking operation. We've been following a weapons supply network through this region, and that convoy was supposed to lead us to a major supply depot. But, sir, the convoy was empty decoys. We know that now, but we didn't know it 6 hours ago when the mission was planned." Colonel Harris pulled up a classified intelligence brief on his screen. "Captain, we've been losing aircraft in this region for months. 3 helicopters and 2 fixed-wing aircraft have been shot down in similar ambush scenarios." The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. Command was using us as bait too. Not bait, but we needed to understand how they were setting these traps. Your mission was designed to trigger their response, so we could identify their positions and capabilities. Sarah felt anger building in her chest. "Sir, you sent us in blind against a known threat without telling us the real mission parameters. Because if you'd known you were flying into an ambush, your behavior would have been different. We needed authentic pilot responses to draw out their full defensive network." Jake looked stunned. "Colonel, with respect, that's using us as expendable assets." "Lieutenant, every mission in this theater involves expendable assets. The question is whether we sacrifice aircraft and crews randomly, or whether we do it strategically to gather intelligence that saves more lives in the long run." Sarah stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "Sir, there had to be a better way to gather that intelligence without risking aircrew." "Captain, sit down. Your mission accomplished its objectives. We now know the full extent of their ambush capabilities. We've destroyed their network in this valley, and we have recordings of their tactics that will help protect future missions. At the cost of nearly getting us killed." Colonel Harris's voice hardened. "Captain, you're alive because you're an exceptional pilot. But you're also alive because I specifically requested you for this mission. I needed someone with the skills and experience to survive contact with this threat network." The admission hung in the air like a physical thing. Sarah realized that her reputation as a pilot who could handle impossible situations had made her the perfect choice for a mission designed to trigger an ambush. "Sir, what about the intelligence failure? Someone told us there were minimal threats in that sector." The intelligence was accurate as far as it went. What they didn't tell you was that we suspected much more than what appeared in the official briefing. Sarah felt like she was falling down a rabbit hole. Every answer revealed another layer of deception and misdirection. How many people knew the real mission parameters? Myself, the intelligence officer, and 2 analysts. Everyone else, including your flight operations, thought this was a standard convoy interdiction mission. Because if word leaked that we were deliberately triggering ambushes, aircrew would refuse to fly. Because operational security requires compartmentalized information. Sarah looked at Jake, who appeared to be processing the same disturbing realization she was having. They weren't just pilots completing missions. They were pieces being moved around a chessboard by people who saw their lives as acceptable losses in exchange for tactical intelligence. "Sir, what happens now?" "Now you write detailed after-action reports. Every tactical observation, every enemy capability you observed, every mistake in our planning process. That information will be used to update our threat assessments and improve mission planning for future operations." "And our next mission?" Colonel Harris smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring expression. "Captain, you've proven you can survive sophisticated ambushes. That makes you extremely valuable for future operations in contested airspace." Sarah understood. Today's mission wasn't the end of flying into traps. It was preparation for more of them. Command had found a pilot who could spring enemy ambushes and survive to report their capabilities. "Sir, request permission to speak freely." "Granted. This is a hell of a way to run a war." "Captain, this is the only way to run a war when the enemy is as smart as we are. Now get some rest. You're flying again tomorrow." 3 weeks after the Valley ambush, Sarah found herself flying through a different mountain range. But the tactical situation felt disturbingly familiar. Intelligence reported another convoy moving through a narrow pass. And, once again, something about the setup made her instincts scream danger. "Jake, are you getting the same feeling about this mission?" "You mean the feeling that we're flying into another trap?" "Yeah, definitely. But this time was different. This time, Colonel Harris had briefed them on the real mission parameters. They were hunting a high-value target, a Taliban commander named Ahmad Massoud, who had been responsible for coordinating the ambush networks that had been destroying coalition aircraft. Intelligence believed he was traveling with this particular convoy. "Overlord, Reaper 6. Beginning approach to target area," Sarah transmitted. "Copy, Reaper 6. Be advised, we have additional assets in the area. Thunder flights are on standby, and Predator drones are providing overwatch." Sarah smiled grimly. Command was taking no chances this time. If this was another ambush, they'd have immediate support available. "Jake, what are you seeing on thermal?" "Convoy of 4 vehicles moving through the pass." "But, Sarah, I'm also picking up heat signatures in the surrounding ridges. Looks like our friend Massoud learned from last time." How many positions?" "At least 12. Maybe more. This isn't just an ambush. It's a full-scale defensive network." Sarah studied the tactical display. The convoy was moving through terrain that channeled aircraft into specific approach routes, with concealed positions covering every possible angle of attack. It was a masterpiece of defensive planning. "Overlord, Reaper 6. We have multiple concealed positions surrounding the target area. Recommend coordinated strike with all available assets." "Negative, Reaper 6. Mission parameters require positive identification of the target before engagement. You need to get close enough to confirm Massoud's presence." Sarah felt the familiar frustration. Command wanted her to fly within visual range of a target that was surrounded by surface-to-air missiles. But this time she had a plan. "Jake, remember what happened in the Valley? When we forced them to reveal their positions by making them shoot first. You want to use ourselves as bait again?" "Not exactly. This time, I want to make them think they have us trapped, then spring our own surprise." Sarah had spent the 3 weeks since the Valley engagement studying enemy tactics and developing new approaches to ambush scenarios. She'd learned that the Taliban fighters had patterns they followed, weaknesses they didn't realize they had. Overlord, Reaper 6. Beginning approach run. Request immediate standby from Thunder Flights. Thunder 2-1, standing by. Sarah flew the Apache directly toward the convoy, following exactly the approach route the enemy would expect. She stayed high enough to be clearly visible to the concealed missile teams, making herself an irresistible target. Jake, are they tracking us? Multiple lock-ons. At least 8 missile systems have us targeted. Perfect. Thunder 2-1, Reaper 6. Light them up. The F-16s have been holding in a high orbit, invisible to the missile teams who were focused on the Apache. The moment Sarah gave the order, precision bombs began falling on the concealed positions. The Taliban fighters had been so focused on the obvious threat that they'd missed the real danger circling above them. Beautiful, Jake called out as explosions lit up the ridgelines. But we still need to identify our target. Sarah dove the Apache toward the convoy, which had stopped moving when the bombing started. Through her helmet display, she could see figures running from the vehicles, trying to find cover. One figure stood out, a man shouting orders, organizing the others. Jake, center vehicle, man in the white turban giving commands. I see him. Definitely matches the photos of Massoud. Overlord, Reaper 6. Positive identification on primary target. Request permission to engage. Reaper 6, you are cleared to engage. The Hellfire missile streaked down from the Apache, impacting directly on Massoud's position. When the smoke cleared, the Taliban commander who had been responsible for killing dozens of coalition aircrew was gone. Target eliminated, Jake confirmed. But Sarah's attention was already shifting to movement she'd spotted in a cave opening on the far side of the valley. Through her targeting system, she could see missile teams repositioning, trying to get a shot at the Apache from an unexpected angle. Jake, new contacts in the cave system. They're still trying to nail us. I see them. These guys don't give up easy. Sarah brought the Apache around in a tight turn, positioning for another missile shot. But as she lined up the target, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Laughter. It was coming through the radio on an enemy frequency they'd been monitoring. A woman's voice, speaking in accented English, laughing with genuine amusement. American pilot, you think you are so clever, yes? You think you have sprung our trap? Sarah keyed her radio to respond. Who is this? I'm someone who has been watching your missions, learning your tactics. You are very good, but you're not the only one who can set traps. Jake's voice was urgent. Sarah, I'm reading massive heat signatures moving up from underground positions. This whole valley is rigged. The woman's laughter continued. You destroyed Ahmad Massoud, yes. But Ahmad was bait, just like your convoy was bait. The real trap is much bigger. Sarah looked at her tactical display and felt her stomach drop. Heat signatures were appearing all around them. Not just missile teams, but what looked like an entire underground complex of fighters emerging from concealed positions. You see, American pilot, we have also learned to use our enemies as bait. Your reputation for surviving ambushes made you the perfect target to draw out all of your support assets. The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just about killing one Apache crew. It was about destroying an entire package of coalition aircraft that had been assembled to support her mission. Thunder Flights, Reaper 6. You need to exit the area immediately. This is a trap designed specifically for our support package. Reaper 6, Thunder 2-1. We're not leaving you behind. The enemy commander's voice came back over the radio. Too late for your friends to run. My fighters have been waiting weeks for this opportunity. Surface-to-air missiles began launching from dozens of positions throughout the valley. Sarah watched in horror as the sky filled with smoke trails, all converging on the F-16s that had come to support her mission. Thunder 2-1, multiple launches. Evade, evade. Sarah threw the Apache into the most aggressive evasive maneuvers she'd ever attempted, diving toward the valley floor while missiles streaked past them on all sides. The enemy commander had turned her own tactics against her, using her reputation and capabilities to set an even more sophisticated trap. Jake, we need to get out of here now. Sarah, look at the tactical display. They got the entire valley sealed off. Sarah realized with dawning horror that the enemy commander was right. There was no way out of this trap. The woman's laughter echoed through her headset as missiles continued to fill the air around them. But Sarah Mitchell had survived 8 years of combat by never giving up, no matter how impossible the situation appeared. And she wasn't about to start now. Jake, remember what you said about us being good at this job? Yeah, time to prove it. Sarah pulled the Apache into a climb that pushed the aircraft to its performance limits, heading directly toward the heaviest concentration of missile fire. If they were going to die, she was going to make sure she took as many of the enemy with her as possible. The enemy commander's laughter stopped abruptly as she realized the American pilot wasn't trying to escape. She was attacking. All units, all units. The American pilot has gone mad. Stop her. But Sarah was beyond stopping. She was in the zone that every combat pilot knew. The place where training, instinct, and pure determination combined to create something more than human capability. Time to show them why they called her the Apache pilot who never quit.